guys, let's talk about all the horror books I've read recently. So I kicked off the month reading a new horror book from Eric LaRocca, and this is, I believe, his first novel. He's mostly written short stories, most notably Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, which I really enjoyed. This story centers on a small New England town that is experiencing some strange stuff. We have a series of disappearances occurring all around the town, and we also have a character who is new to town. He's the new town sheriff, and he's moved there with his partner. He's experiencing a lot of hatred. And then the story eventually meets up, and we find out how these things are all connected. What I love about this story is the small town setting. I love that it's set in New England. It felt very Stephen King-esque / Midnight Mass to me. The prologue of this story is really good. It's really weird, and it sets up a lot of questions for the rest of the story, where I was like, okay, what the hell is going on? Who is this dude, and what just happened? Because it's insane what happens in the prologue. But unfortunately, the rest of the story kind of didn't really give me what I wanted. I guess hearing that there's this mysterious stranger in this town, I wanted more of a Salem's Lot kind of story. Like, that sounded very Barlow to me. I just wanted to follow the people among this town, meet more people than the people we got, and I just feel like there wasn't enough development there. The story was a little too slow for me, and I didn't really think that the author interwove the storylines very well. It didn't make sense how they were connected. I didn't see how they were connected. It felt like two different books that I was reading. I think if you like the writer, it's worth checking out, but I was kind of disappointed with it, I'm sad to say. Then I read probably my favorite read of the month, and that is You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight from Galen Bayron. This is a new one from Bloomsbury Publishing that is hitting shelves on June 20th, and I loved it so much. It is the perfect read for fans of horror slashers like Friday the 13th and Scream. So this centers on a camp that is essentially a horror terror experience. People visit this camp in order to go through a terror experience that is based on an infamous cult horror movie that was filmed at this camp years before. So think Friday the 13th. These people come to experience what happens in the Friday the 13th movies. Love that concept immediately. I think that it's so clever, and I don't know why more people haven't used that as a story, because a lot of people do this. A lot of horror fans enjoy doing these horror terror experiences, especially tied to Friday the 13th. So I was very excited about that, and then we meet this group of teenagers who are essentially running the terror experience, and then everything goes to crap when they begin disappearing one by one, and our lead final girl has to figure out what's happening and put a stop to it. I love this one so much because I love the setting of this camp. It felt very summery, very slasher. The kills were brutal, surprisingly so. I was not expecting them to go to where they go in this story because it's YA, but it didn't feel like YA. And the characters were so enjoyable, and they felt like real teenagers who said real teenage things. None of it felt forced. It all felt like genuine conversations between teenagers. The banter between the friends was just, it was so fun, and it made me laugh out loud at times and giggle because it just felt natural to me, and that's the biggest strength of this book, is its characters. And I also love that the characters in this are very much self-aware. Like characters in Scream, there's a character in this that's very much like Randy, and she's like breaking down all the horror rules and all of that stuff, and I just love that. I geek out on this stuff. And our lead final girl character is so just compelling. She's a badass. And I love that she basically is resourceful, and she's super intelligent because she knows the grounds of this camp better than anything else, better than anyone else, so that when stuff starts going wrong, she really steps up. I also liked that a lot of the characters were people of color, and the story, they have those conversations about how people of color in horror are often killed off first, and there was a lot of commentary about that, and I really enjoyed seeing that. I think that the story was really interesting and fun. I was on the edge of my seat, and then it takes a turn, a twist that I was not expecting for the story to go. And I didn't particularly love the twist, but I do give props to the author for being creative with it. She took a risk there and did something different, because I think I went into this expecting it to be full on Friday the 13th, and it's not that. But overall, I love this one. It's just, I think it's a great read for the horror fans. And I picked up The Lake House by Sarah Beth Durst. This is another YA horror, and it's centered around a group of girls who are sent to this summer camp in the middle of the wilderness, in the middle of nowhere. And when they get there, they discover that everyone is dead or missing, and they have to figure out what's happening. And this is a survival horror. So unfortunately with this one, I had to put it down because unlike You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, the characters in this are just very, very cringy to me, and I felt like a lot of their dialogue felt very forced, and I just couldn't connect with these characters in the way that I connected with the characters in You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. I tried, I did my best, but I had a feeling it wasn't going to be what I wanted, so I passed it off to my niece and DNF'd this one. Sorry to say, but if you've read it and you like it, please let me know. Then I picked up Summer Never Ends by Judith Sonnet, and this is another summer camp horror. This is centered around a young boy who is off to church camp, basically, and he's there to kind of appease his parents, and he meets up with a few other boys to become friends, and one day while they're exploring in the camp, something goes horribly wrong, and they're put into a situation where they have to fight for their lives, essentially. I really enjoyed this one. It was not what I was expecting at all. It's very dark and centered around religion and religious trauma, religious abuse, and the stuff that's happening is really intense, really disturbing, really dark, and it's happening to children, so that makes it even harder to read in stomach. The violence is over the top. It's really just brutal. It just punches you in the face. I like that this story examines religion and how some people weaponize their faith. It's a very shocking, quick read, and if you're looking for that summery, extreme horror vibe, this is a must read. And then I finished off the month with another slasher horror called Curse of the Reaper by Brian McCauley. So this one, I went into it expecting one thing and it turned into something completely different. So this is centered on a film that is very much like Friday the 13th that is being rebooted decades later, and they're trying to replace the lead killer role with someone new. So the story follows the POV of the original horror icon that played this killer called the Reaper, and the other POV is the person that is trying to take his place. And it's really a character study of these two people, how they're dealing with the events of this movie, and how Hollywood has kind of eaten them up and spit them out, essentially. And the original horror icon, his name is Howard Browning, and he's gone through a lot. He basically gave his blood, sweat, and tears to this character, only to be rewarded with being told he is not going to be in the new movie. And that whole concept, that scenario, is very reminiscent of what happened to Kane Hodder with Freddy vs. Jason. They recast Jason in that, and Kane Hodder wasn't a part of it, and that was like a huge thing. I felt like he was very much like the Kane Hodder figure, and then the other character is much younger, but he is dealing with his own demons. He's trying his best to recover from a drug addiction. It was really interesting to read from their two perspectives because they're both at different points of in their lives and their careers. And when the horror kicks in, it's a slow build to the horror, but the Reaper essentially becomes real, and we see how he affects both of these people. And it's really disturbing, it's really sad, it's shocking at times. The story is really well told because they intersperse the scripts from the actual Reaper film series throughout the story, and it was really cool to read those parts and actually see the dialogue and hear what the stories are, and it felt very much like you were taken through Friday the 13th movies, and even a little bit of A Nightmare on Elm Street in there, and some Halloween Curse of Michael Myers stuff in there. So it was really fun to read all of that, and you could really tell that the author is a horror fan, and this felt like a love letter to the genre. But I also feel like it is definitely providing some commentary on how Hollywood treats creators and creatives, and it's all a business to them, and creators are kind of just thrown to the side. I think it was a really interesting read. I think it's perfect for fans of the Friday the 13th films, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween. I think it was really entertaining, really fun at times, a little bit slow, but I feel like it's worth it when you get there. I think that this is a perfect read if you were a fan of horror movies. So I highly recommend this one. And there you have it. Those are all the horror books I've read recently. Let me know your thoughts on the books I talked about and let me know what you've read recently. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I will catch you next time. Bye.